Much love and thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. And to reiterate, Skillshare is an online learning community packed to the brim with classes for the creative mind. Although I guess things are starting to look up with us getting the pandemic dealt with, vaccinations and all that, it's still important to stay indoors whenever you can. And you might as well learn a thing or two when you're not binging a streaming service. And if you're unsure if education after high school is the right decision for you at this time, or maybe you have finished school and you feel you can expand your horizontals, as they say, Skillshare has what you need to supply you with additional knowledge along with fellow like-minded creatives. For this month, I'm recommending Artivism, Create Inspiring Art for Change by Nicholas Smith.
I want to start with a scary question. Are you an artist?
God, yeah, I am. There are many, countless ways to express yourself in activism, and Mr. Smith's course demonstrates how you can help take your stand and spread your message through the arts. For some, it's the best way to express themselves, and in these kinds of times, it's also a relatively safer option. But there's also courses for web development, essential tools in writing stories, and stuff like animation, if you don't feel like blowing thousands of dollars for something you could have easily learned online. And Skillshare is giving away a free trial of their premium membership to the first 1,000 people who can click the link in the description below to help you explore your creativity. And after that, it's only around $10 a month. As always, I appreciate you guys helping support this channel, and thanks once again to Skillshare for the sponsorship. And now on with the show. So this video is going to be a little different on how I approach it. At least I think so anyway. I feel it's a little unorthodox for me to be reviewing a new series for this channel on the 5th game. This is Dragon Quest V: Hand of the Heavenly Bride. But why am I looking at this game? Why am I starting with the 5th game in the series? Simply put, my friend Ted gifted me the DS version of the game some time ago, and I said I would play it and make a video about it. And to be completely frank here, I had no intention of doing a Dragon Quest marathon for some time. Shit, even today I still don't know when I'm gonna do it. One of my favorite things about doing marathons is looking into a series' beginning, how it was conceptualized, and seeing the evolution of its design as the games and years pass by, as I've said countless times beforehand. To start with, the 5th game does feel a little wrong to me, so for this video, I'm just gonna jump into it and give my general thoughts like the newbie I am. Though I like to think I'm not a complete newbie. There is some degree of familiarity with Dragon Quest that I've had for several years. Hell, when I was a kid, I knew it as Dragon Warrior. Hard to believe it wasn't until the 8th game on the PlayStation 2 where it was finally kept as Dragon Quest here in the West. But no, like a lot of other games in my history, the first game was something I saw my uncle play a whole bunch. And last year on my Twitch page, I finally took the time to pop my Dragon Quest cherry by completing the original game. And it's not something I would recommend today, just to get that out of the way. As you know, Final Fantasy is what I really want to give some love next, and after that, sometime in the future, I don't know, maybe something from Atlas, like Shin Megami Tensei or the Persona series. The sky's the limit, since I plan on doing this shindig for a very long time. I figure I got plenty of time. But I also think the reason why I was asked by Ted to play this was to simply help raise awareness for the Dragon Quest franchise for a Western audience. In Japan, Dragon Quest is huge, easily trumps Final Fantasy in popularity, while here in the West, it's the opposite. And while I'm sure Square Enix is happy counting those dollars regardless of the flip-flopping demographics, I think Western Dragon Quest fans wish the series had a little more attention given to it, which, from what I can tell, is a thing that's slowly happening. For example, I've heard nothing but great things over Dragon Quest XI. I think that's the latest game in the series, both its original release and its updated re-release. So while it's still a work in progress likely, people here in the West are seeing more and more of what Japan loves about the franchise so much. And I've always had the faintest of interest in the series. Before I even considered looking at Dragon Quest V, I already had the 7th game on the PlayStation 1, the 8th game on the PlayStation 2, and I shit you not, I also already had the original release of the 5th game on the Super Famicom. I play a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, and that had a Dragon Quest crossover event. You're able to get this little Brickman minion here. It's an adorable little thing. I'm thinking I'm going to get into some classic motorboat in action here with Puff Puff, but Puff Puff ended up just being 2 Yetis being rubbed in my face like hairy scrotums, and I don't know, maybe on a weekend, sure. There's also the King Slime hat, which unapologetically jiggles everywhere you take it, especially like in places like the Void Ark, where it never stops moving. Dragon Quest was something I figured I would eventually get around to playing for myself and for this channel. One, because I'm always down for playing JRPGs, and two, on a more surface level reasoning, the covers of the game tickled my fancy because I was familiar with the character and monster designer for the series, Akira Toriyama, world-renowned illustrator famous for his magnum opus, Chrono Trigger. I'm kidding, but you should go ahead and play Chrono Trigger anyway, shit's amazing. Yes, as a Dragon Ball fan, Dragon Quest made me somewhat curious, even though they have nothing to do with each other. Again, surface level interest, which I had been burned by before because that was also the reason why I even considered playing Blue Dragon on the Xbox 360. And that was a snooze fest. So because I'm jumping into the 5th game all willy-nilly, I don't think I'm going to treat this as a standard versus video where I have a dedicated plot synopsis and gameplay analysis that has the baggage of previous Dragon Quest knowledge. I'm still going to be discussing the plot, so spoilers and all that. This video is about my personal experiences and such. While this does sound like a strange scenario for me, I don't think it's that concerning. Like Final Fantasy, just for the sake of comparing it to something, Dragon Quest games aren't connected. You can jump in anyway. They all have their own individual stories and all that. So an important thing to discern here is Dragon Quest V a good jumping point? If we're talking strictly on story level, yeah, Hand of the Heavenly Bride's plot is a straightforward romp that at times even subverts my expectations in a refreshing way, even as someone who's played these kind of games for years on end. But at the end of the day, it hits a lot of familiar beats that, yes, make it a tad predictable, but I also think it makes it easy to understand and follow along, which I find admirable and important for engaging new players. For this adventure, you're in control of this dude. You can name him whatever you want, since I have no sense of originality. I just named him Johnny. You got yourself and you got your dad as the adventure begins. And hey, all the brownie points to Pancras here. He's a dad who really cares for his son. He's quick to jump in and protect you in battle. He heals you after every monster you face with him. He's a good man, And he even keeps good company with Sancho here, who is an absolute sweetheart, even if I do find his stereotypical Spanish accent to be somewhat offensive. But already you know this kid's going through the standard RPG motions. Firstly, he's born of royalty, but after he was conceived, his mother seemingly died, because we just can't have protagonists with a healthy set of parents for this sort of shit. It's a fucking mandate. But that's just what it seems. Again, this is what I'm talking about the game subverting my expectations, because it later turns out that your mom is still alive, and that's what you're spending your time with your dad doing, sailing the 7 seas and searching for a means of rescuing her, though the kid isn't aware of this just yet. But after visiting some friends in the kingdom of Coburg, this is where things turn south really fast. The young Prince Harry is soon abducted by the minions of this evil Bishop Lodja, who serves the Grand Master Nimzo, an evil entity that threatens to emerge from the underworld and conquer the world. Despite his best efforts to save the kid, your dad is killed off, and I mean fucking obliterated, right in front of the hero. And then he, along with Prince Harry, are sold as slaves where they spend the next 10 years feverishly working to build this temple in Crocodilopolis in the name of the Order of Zugzwang. And we're just getting started here. You and Harry manage to escape after some time, and Harry returns to Coburg where his half-brother Wilbur has ruled in his place in his absence. And I'm here thinking, oh, I bet that brother is a corrupted bastard who doesn't want to give up his seat of power. But no. Again, Dragon Quest V turned that expectation on its head. Wilbur is more than happy to give the kingdom back to Harry. It's Wilbur's mother who has issues with it. In fact, she is the reason why Harry was abducted in the first place 10 years ago, also that Wilbur could take the throne so that she could rule the kingdom by manipulating Wilbur. You later rescue her when you expose an imposter running amok in Coburg, but it doesn't change the fact that she was still a real bitch for what she put Harry through. And if I'm not mistaken, she gets no comeuppance for her actions. Harry takes back the throne, Wilbur acts as an advisor after that point, and then the story moves on. It's very strange. I gotta give props to the storytelling here with Prince Harry though. I thought he was gonna be an insufferable little shit that gets away with everything because of his status, but after getting kidnapped and spending 10 years as a slave with the hero, the dude gets humbled big time and later on becomes a real fucking bro. The best moment for me that almost made me tear up really, is when he asks you to go fetch this item in a treasure chest, and you open it, but instead of finding an item, you find a message inside instead where he pours his heart out for you because, well, he can't quite say it directly in front of you, but he's deeply sorry for your loss and realizes how much of an asshole he was as a kid. Man, I love that moment. Again, subverting my expectations in a refreshing way. But as for our hero, since he now knows his mother is alive out there somewhere, and since his father told him so right before becoming a smoking crater, he now wants to resume where his father left off. This takes him to Mastro Ferrato, where he's tasked by Rodrigo Briscoletti with finding these 2 rings so that he can prove himself, also that he could wed his daughter Nera. Kind of a fast turnaround, but in the middle of this task, our hero runs into childhood friend Bianca, both of which shared some adventures together in their youth, including liberating a haunted castle from their ghoulish oppressors. Oh, the things children get into in these sort of games. Anyway, you get the rings and you take them back to Briscoletti, but instead of marrying Nera, you're also given the option to marry Bianca instead, which the game heavily nudges you to do a few times throughout. Bianca is even the main girl on the cover of the game, for fuck's sake. There ain't no Nera there. But in the DS version, there's also Deborah, Briscoletti's second, more assholish daughter. I'm not sure assholish is even a word, but I'm making it one now. And as much as a basic bitch move it might seem to Dragon Quest fans, yeah, I went with Bianca. Look, there's history there. I just met Nera, and don't get me wrong, she's a sweetheart. I know she means well, but it's too much, too fast. And Deborah, I mean, I know I play a tank in Final Fantasy XIV, but I'm not that much of a bottom to lock down with her, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we're newlyweds now, and can we discuss the time frame of events happening here? Because just a couple of hours after you get hitched, as you're making your way to Lofty Peak to get more information about the birthplace of your mom, and to help find her and the legendary hero like your dad wanted, your wife is suddenly ill with exhaustion, and soon after that, bam, you got a set of kids. Fuck, 9 months passed in the span of 2 hours? Also, when did they fuck? You think they at least allude to that beforehand, but this is a magical fucking pregnancy here. But yeah, twins? I went with the default names of Perry and Madgen, but looking back, I don't know. Should have gone with John for the girl and for the boy, I don't know. Johnny too. And I love that the look of the kids is reflective of the mother too. Blue hair if you went with Nira, black hair if you went with Deborah. All the more reason to go with Bianca because the kids are born as Super Saiyans, and that's the hill I'm dying on. It's a joyous occasion. You're even crowned the new king of Gotham, the kingdom that your father originally ruled before he went on his permanent sabbatical. It feels so weird that something like that is just a footnote in this adventure. But then because fate really fucking hates our main hero, your wife is kidnapped by the same cult of goons that took the hero's mother when he was just a child. It turns out your wife is a descendant of the legendary hero, so to make sure she doesn't cause trouble for Grandmaster Nimzo, they just want to take her out of the picture. They try and take the kids too, but thankfully they're hidden away before things get really ugly. But things get really ugly anyway, because now you're off to save your wife, which eventually leads you to her kidnappers, but then both you and your wife are petrified by dark magic, and they stay like this for 8 fucking years! The hero is sold off at an auction where he remains a garden gnome for this dude's house, and the wife becomes the centerpiece for the Crocodilopolis temple. Eventually, you are rescued from your predicament thanks to the combined efforts of Sancho, that wonderful meatball, and your own children. Yes, your kids are now 8-year-old, full-fledged warriors that become party members. So now you have a party of yourself, your kids, and I guess Sancho. I actually went with my pet saber cat for most of my adventure. I didn't even realize Sancho was in my party until the final stretch of the game. For most of it, you have this wagon that accompanies you where extra party members reside, but this mainly applies to the monsters you can recruit whenever one wants to join you after you beat them in battle. For Sancho and even someone like this soldier Tuppence, you have to go out of your way to the party planner where you could rearrange your team there. I don't know, I feel that could have been handled better, especially considering that the DS game is a remake that could have used that opportunity to make it more accessible or at least more obvious. Alright, the kids are okay, Sancho is okay, it's time to rescue the wife, which includes restoring the ancient castle of Zethian, since that is the origin of these weapons you can recover that could be used to eventually stop Grandmaster Nimzo. You run into this dude named Dr. Agon, who is in fact this old dragon that donned a human disguise and does a bizarre Ned Flanders impersonation that he later settles down with because he actually gets tired of speaking in his old tongue. And as you explore this hidden fairy village, you're told that your son is actually the legendary hero destined to save the world that your dad was searching for. So the main protagonist in this case is more of a tag-along, which kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy X with the whole Tidus and Yuna dynamic, only, you know, the hero doesn't talk as much. And I realize I'm sort of going through the beats here, but things happen and resolve pretty fucking fast in this game. You know, the process of going from point A to point B, running into a new problem, and then finding a solution to said problem. Dragon Quest V isn't so much about the goal. That shit is really obvious, and for the most part it's played straight. But the nuance of all of it is centered on the party and world of Dragon Quest V, the people within it, you know? But, and this is a major but, this is almost based entirely on you using the talk command to flesh things out, and that right there is probably my biggest gripe with this game's storytelling. You can talk with your party members after every little thing that happens in the game. I'm talking after learning of a new goal, having a conversation with another person, witnessing a life-changing event. You can get your party members' thoughts and opinions on the current predicament, which is rife with fun character moments and interactions, and even hints to help you move along. I don't think the game encourages it enough, if at all. I'm sure the manual makes mention of it as a gameplay function, but the game itself doesn't put enough emphasis on it as a storytelling mechanic. Which is a shame because without using the talk command, you missed out on a few things. Namely, your main character actually responding and showing some human fucking emotion to what's happening around them. He's the standard silent protagonist that just goes with the flow, but you learn through the talk command that he's deeply troubled by the loss of his father, his mother's unknown whereabouts, the fact that he missed 8 years of his children's life. None of that is highlighted without using the optional talk command. Otherwise, you along with your comrades are just a group of people that just goes around the world and does things. And maybe that was a throw a bone to those old-fashioned Dragon Warrior players, where the only thing that mattered back then was you running around in circles for 12 hours watching numbers go up, then you get money, you go to towns and shops to watch other numbers go up, and then at the end of it all, you slay the dragon and you rescue the princess. Day is saved, turn it off, I'm gonna go back home now. I think it's something that needed more focus on, because without that, these folks can get dangerously close to what I consider earthbound protagonists. Folks who, after being introduced, amounted to fucking cardboard people. Thankfully, these characters are more layered, but you gotta put the effort to make them more layered, you know? Look at this shit. I'll give it to Dragon Quest, man. Final Fantasy has your boats, your canoes, and your airships for travel, but this game gives you a magic carpet and a whole fucking castle. It's slower than Continental Drift, but come on, that's metal as fuck. But let's see here. You restore the castle, Ned Flanders takes you to Crocodilopolis. You find your still petrified wife, you kill the queen and king of the place, you run into the evil bishop again, you save your wife, you learn of the means to get to the underworld, you head to the underworld, you kill the bishop and his goons for good, your mom is alive until she's suddenly not, using the last of her power to help open up a pathway to Grandmaster Nimzo, and then, finally, you take on Grandmaster Nimzo, who speaks in the same unreadable font from the opening of Devil May Cry. Goddamn, this shit was an eyesore. You defeat Grandmaster Nimzo after battling him for what felt like an hour. The day is saved and the whole world celebrates a new era of peace. I did enjoy that little world tour that followed up, visiting all the major locales of the game, and seeing the people thank you for your courage and all that as you head back to your kingdom to relax and waltz the night away. That's a good way of highlighting the best moments of your adventure, and my issues with the talk command aside, I did enjoy my time here. 30 plus hours of traditional JRPG goodness that at no point felt like I was just going through the motions. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it feels good to dive into an RPG that isn't overly complex for the wrong reasons, or just straight out garbage. I love the fact that the main party at the end of it all is a husband, wife, and their 2 kids. Shit, I just realized this game breaks the traditional RPG curse of having protagonists having only one or no parents. Sure, the hero loses his mom and dad, but he along with his wife are still alive for the future generation. In a way, they're kind of like the Incredibles of JRPG protagonists, at least from my experiences, and I don't know, I kind of like that feeling it invokes. The story has pretty depressing moments, but it never gets overly dour. There is a sense of optimism that never truly fades away, in one part due to the nature of the story progression, and another part due to the game's great sense of humor. And I'm not just talking about the absurd amount of puns you get from enemy names and town locations, and there's really way too much to fucking count here. But no, there are a lot of moments in the game that got a legitimate laugh out of me. Just to name some of my favorites. As soon as the game begins, you try and read this book, but you can't because the game tells you you don't know how to read yet. A man warns you of a terrifying ogre in this lighthouse, and you head inside, and you realize the only thing inside is just a dude named Ogar, and he's sick of people getting that confused and hassling him. The drunk in this pub who waits for the bar to open. You can head into it from the back, and if you go behind the counter, the dude rushes to you thinking you're the bartender, and then immediately realizes you're not and sits back down. Everything involving the old lady that upgrades your sword. Shit, I love this game's confusion status. It's more like an intoxicated status, because one of the things that can happen is the party member trying to smooch another party member, and they push them back like totally unimpressed. Dragon Quest V is funny, it really is. And as for the game, it's pretty standard, which isn't that all surprising considering that it's a remake of a 1992 SNES RPG. It was not a problem jumping into this at all for me. But the world map was a little visually confusing for me at first. Early on, I kept thinking these brown hills on the ground were mountains I couldn't cross, and I thought that I had to find other ways to get to my next destination. Then I realized by accident, oh wait, I can just walk on these, and that these right here are the impassable mountains. It's a small thing, but one I did find quirky. There are random encounters to run into when you least expect it, which, can I just say, love the animated sprites of this remake. Beats the hell out of the static images from the original. Being real, I think they even look better than the models from the PS2 version. Yeah, it's my 2D bias, I don't doubt that. But I love the way enemies move in this game. Where was I? Oh yes, the usual RPG stuff like experience to help you grow stronger, money to earn and spend on new weapons and armor, magic to either help yourself with healing and defensive buffs, or elemental spells to wreak havoc on those vulnerable to it. That said, man, it was a while before I got used to these spell names. There's nothing as straightforward as fire or blizzard or thunder. No, there's sizz, frizzle, kaswoosh, thwack, crackle, pop, rice krispies. These aren't names, they're onomatopoeias. These are the sounds the elemental spells make, and committing them to memory took a little bit. But I mean, odd naming conventions aside, they're the standard flair for RPG spells. You pick your favorites with the appropriate character and go to town. Though I noticed, and maybe it was because I was underutilizing characters because it was my first time playing the game, I noticed a lot of bosses, especially by the final third of the game, they have remarkably similar methods of taking them down. You use sap or cuss sap to lower the defense, you use oomph to power up your physical attacks, and then you melt them down with your beaten stick. Assuming they didn't use bounce to reflect spells, there wasn't anything stopping you from using elemental spells when you could, but I was more likely to save mana for healing spells. God, especially by a late game, where everyone and their fucking grandmother had those fire and ice attacks that hit the whole party at once for big damage without insulating it. And they just can't cast spells if they're dead, but even so, I found myself using elemental rods to cast spells for no mana cost because I found mana itself awfully fickle to manage. Mana restoration was surprisingly hard to come by in this game. You can find the occasional ether bottles and treasure chests that restore 12 mana points, which seemed awfully small. You can find these prayer rings to restore MP, but they shatter after a few uses. And these elfin elixirs are few and far between if you're not gambling your money away in these casinos and game boards, which for the record, I didn't spend much time at all, not really a gambling man in RPGs or otherwise. guys. The game will occasionally throw you a bone with these restoration points inside dungeons that restore you fully, but I was shocked to discover that the game only gave you like 3 or 4 of these throughout the whole thing. Most dungeons require that you get through it all with whatever you have on your person at the time. If you're running dangerously low on supplies, you get the fuck out of there, you zoom your way to the nearest town and restock. Saving the game is also just a little antiquated. You have to visit churches inside towns and kingdoms to save your game. And man, can I just say how annoying it is that I can't simply mash the B button to skim through the same repeated dialogue the priest gives me every time I want to confirm that I'm saving my game, because if I do that, it will default to no when it asks me if I want to continue my adventure, because if I say no, then the game basically freezes. It says, all right, you can now turn the game off, have a blessed night, child, or some other shit. You can't do anything else besides reset the game after that happens. That is a very old school thing from the NES games that didn't need to be there at all. Thankfully, the DS version also has the quick save, which lets you save anywhere with a couple of exceptions. But every time you use this, the game immediately ends and once again requires that you reset to resume your progress. Please tell me this is the last game in the series to do this. Please tell me so. Anyway, because I got a little caught up in mana management, or because you had encounters which basically neutralize magic altogether, this caused certain boss battles to drag on for way too long because of my limited approach options. The final boss is probably the biggest example I could think of, and I won't harp on that too much seeing as I think the final boss is supposed to be challenging. But I think he's only as much of a threat as he is because the final dungeon doesn't let you quick save for one thing, and there's no restoration points at all. Assuming you don't leave the place after the penultimate encounter to recharge, you have to do everything here in basically one go. If not, that's a whole bunch of backtracking you gotta do. Using evac to escape the dungeon, you zoom back to the town, then you zoom back to the castle, then you gotta go through the dungeon manually again, doing your best to avoid random encounters or blowing them away with this Tempest shield because you don't want to blow resources on shit that doesn't matter anymore. Old school design that I certainly did not miss. If you want my advice, make sure you got a good range of backup monsters that know some healing spells. I went into this earlier, but this game lets you recruit monsters occasionally. I think it's random when you can recruit one. But when it happens, they're essentially an additional party member, like Pokemon. They can gain levels to get stronger, and they can learn new abilities. Sure, the Killer Tomato sticks out amongst my mostly human brigade, but he ended up being pretty helpful early on. And I say early on because his level cap was way earlier than I was expecting, and I found that lame. I want to kill the final boss with the tomato, but the game doesn't want me to. Slimelight was another favorite of mine because of their reliable attack and healing spells, a good backup, and that's what you should consider these guys backup. If you don't want to spend your mana with the main party, just temporarily switch them out in the middle of the battle with some monsters and let them cast those spells. It doesn't cost a turn to switch characters either, so with a full stack, parties can have up to 8 participants, which is nothing to scoff at. And to make things better, everyone in the party wagon gets the same amount of experience as active participants, so they grow as everyone else does. A fantastic design choice. You should have seen my face when my kids joined my party for the first time, because at that point I'm already rocking like level 20 plus characters, and they're joining the fray at like level 5, and I'm like, oh fuck, it's the Earthbound beginnings problem again. I gotta waste a lot of time just getting them up to speed. But no, the wagon experience system caught them up incredibly quickly, and the pace kept going strong because of that. Dragon Quest V is nothing I haven't played before, but it is a damn great starting point for newcomers. It's marred by a few old school antics due to its origins as an early SNES RPG, but everything else surrounding it, I'm talking the great story, the funny dialogue, the tried and true turn-based JRPG mechanics that makes it extremely easy to get into. If this is what I have to look forward to in future Dragon Quest games, assuming they fix the problems I had with this game, DS Remake or otherwise, then I think I got some good times ahead. And maybe that's when I'll finally unwrap the copy of Dragon Quest XI on the Switch that Ted got me some time ago. But I think I'm done being bribed with gifts for the time being. So I have an update video that'll go live in a couple of days. Considering some changes that are happening in my neck of the woods, I want to get you guys up to speed with that. I also got another round 2 in the works, and I think it's very obvious what that one's going to be. And now, I think it's time to finally head into what I really want to talk about. So I'll see you guys for the next video. As always, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care. On a closing note, because I realized I didn't really mention this in the script, the PS2 orchestral arrangements of Dragon Quest V are fantastic, and you should give them a listen when you get the chance. That's all I wanted to say about that. So have a good night, everybody. Take care.